today if you wanted to. Okay, now the exciting stuff happens. So, this very next person on stage, I have to say, I love him to bits, and I didn't used to say that about a man until I went through this journey. But I love this man to bits. I really do. He's my utter hero. Over 40 years, over the past 40 years, he's studied Chinese herbal medicine in China. He's founded and driven so many, or so much, of the herbal medicine drive in UK and Europe. He's practiced in London and the Cotswolds, and he continues to lobby government. I am absolutely convinced that I wouldn't be standing here, or even this side of the daisies, if it wasn't for Michael McIntyre. He has added years to my life, I'm sure about that. When I was doing my research, I kept reading about Michael McIntyre, and you read it and you don't think about it in the early days. And people kept mentioning this name, and finally I read his name in print in a book, a cancer book called Pog. And when I read it, and it was about the fifth time that I read his name, I said, I just have to go and see this man. His wit and his charm and his wisdom was everything I needed to keep my hope and my belief when everybody else said what I was doing wasn't possible. I went to visit Michael in Euro Rehab Hospital because, of course, Michael had a stroke in February. And I dared mention to him about ChippyWellFest. And I dared mention that, would he like to be here? And Michael said, of course I'm going to be here. And of course I'm going to be on stage because I owe it to the community. So today is the first full day that Michael is out of hospital. I mean, how cool is that? And he's done it for you. He's a totally irrepressible force of nature. And he's here.
Hello, good morning. How lovely to see you all. What a really wonderful, I've been looking forward to it very much and thinking, I can't really believe this is going to happen. I've been in hospital since February when I had a stroke. I want to tell you about my experience of being ill, because actually it's quite fascinating to be somebody who's supposed to be helping other people to be well and to get sick yourself. The first thing is that people say to you, physician, heal thyself, and what you want to do is strangle them when they say that. If one more person says, physician, heal thyself, I'd probably not be responsible for my actions. The other thing is, I want to say, is I'm not Michael McIntyre. If you've come here to see the comedian, you're going to be very disappointed. I've had this trouble through my life for the last 20 years. I went to the bank here in Chipping Norton, and I suddenly saw every person in the bank suddenly appeared outside of their offices. I realised they all expected Michael McIntyre to turn up, and I wasn't him. And I also, when I ring up and I ask for places in a restaurant, they say your name, and I say Michael McIntyre. They say, could you spell that? And I spell it. And when I turn up, I'm taken to the best place in there, and they look incredibly disappointed. I almost carry a passport around with me to prove who I am. Even my daughter, my darling daughter, who's helped me here today, had a bit of a problem because she had a friend who told her that he'd seen Michael McIntyre, who apparently, reputedly lives around here as well. In fact, Chipping Norton is a really strange place because lots of really famous people live around here. And I was in one of the supermarkets here, and the lady who was at the supermarket checkout said, when I said something about another celebrity who was front page news on the Chipping Norton newspaper, she said, yeah, this bee, the Beverly Hills of the Cotswolds, this bee. I love the this bee bit. This bee, the Beverly Hills of the Cotswolds, this bee. And this be it. Yes. So Michael McIntyre lives around here, and it's not just me, it's the other one as well. And my daughter said, my friend saw Michael McIntyre in the supermarket, and I said, yes, I know, I saw him, the friend. She said, no, Dad, not that Michael McIntyre, the real Michael McIntyre. And she's never lived it down. And she's furious with me now, I can tell you, for saying that in public, because it's probably not true. Is it true, Amelia? Where is she? It is true. Anyway, I did have a problem, because a long time ago I did a documentary for the BBC on herbal medicine. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I started getting all Michael McIntyre's private fan mail sent to the BBC. And some of it was quite unprintable. It seemed that people wanted to tell the dirtiest jokes they could and write them down on a piece of paper and send them to this chap, Michael McIntyre, for him to tell, which I don't know what he does with them, actually. Anyway, my poor receptionists were opening these things every day. There were piles of them coming in, and some of them were really, really unspeakably rude and horrible. And I decided I'd had enough, and I phoned the BBC, and I said to the BBC, would you stop sending me Michael McIntyre's fan mail? And they said, who's speaking? And that's when the trouble started. And I said, Michael McIntyre. We've got to write one here. And you've got to write one here as well, because I'm a bit of a Charlie. I'm not Michael McIntyre at all, I'm Charlie, because I was so stupid to have this stroke. And that's really part of the reason I'm here, to say that nobody is exempt from being ill. Actually, even physicians can get ill, and that's okay as well. We all ought to look after ourselves and realise that none of us are actually invulnerable, which I think I had come to the conclusion that I was when I look back at the various things that happened. Can I have the next slide? Can I do this? Does that do it?
Next one.
Yeah. That's the end, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, doesn't matter. Forget that on the end. So what can you see? Can you see the brain scan?
Yes.
So that's my brain scan taken on the 3rd of February. Unfortunately, on the 3rd of February, fortunately, I was at home with my daughter Amelia, who's very kindly trying to change the slides to keep up with me, and I just said I was going to do something quickly. I ran out of the room, and I found myself flat on the floor. I'd had a stroke, and Amelia, who is, thank God, intelligent and to the point, took no notice of her dad at all when he said, "Don't call an ambulance." And she called an ambulance, and I was taken by the ambulance to the John Radcliffe. And the reason why I was taken to the John Radcliffe is I live in a village just down the road from here, which is in the first village, and this is pertinent, the first village in Gloucestershire, actually. It's in a place called Church Westcote. It's one of the first villages in just over the border in Gloucestershire. But my address is an Oxfordshire address because the nearest post office is Chipping Norton. So we've got an OX7 postcode. So when the ambulance people got the postcode, they also got the idea they'd take me to an Oxfordshire hospital. And they took me to the John Radcliffe. And the John Radcliffe looked after me really well. They did this brain scan. And you can see the white bits and the black bits on that brain scan. It's not terribly good. I had a blood clot which came out of one of my arteries and went into my brain. and floored me, literally. It actually put me on the floor, and I managed to crawl onto a sofa where I thought I'd be okay, but I wasn't. And I have absolutely no memory even now, I find it hard to say how this can happen, of the next 6 weeks of my life. Completely disappeared. The only other period of my life that has completely disappeared is my childhood. I've always found it strange that you forget your childhood, you don't really remember being 2 years old or 3 years old. Some people do. I remember reading that Compton Mackenzie, the writer, could remember being 1 year old or 2 years old, and I thought to myself, what a shame I can't remember that, because there's so much when you're a child that's remarkable, that's new. How lovely it would be to remember all that. I remember learning to ride a bicycle and swimming. Those two things, remarkable things, where you suddenly start doing something that you hadn't done before, and how wonderful that was. And I don't remember being a child, and I don't remember being in the John Radcliffe for 6 whole weeks. What I do remember of the Radcliffe... Sorry, can I do this? What does that one say? Stroke of good fortune. What I do remember of the going to the John Radcliffe was a very remarkable thing, is that I kept on begging the ambulance driver and my daughter to stop the ambulance and get out and buy me a Kit Kat. I've always liked Kit Kats, actually. This is me telling a confessional up here. I always quite like them. I don't have any shares in whoever makes them, so I'm not advertising them. But I've always really liked them. And on the ambulance, I just had this overwhelming need to eat Kit Kat. And actually, when I was in hospital, I started reading about strokes. And I was amazed to discover, I think it's on another slide. Is there a slide there somewhere which says something about, can you see where the bit is about? That around 70% of the brain, I think from the slide, if I remember rightly, 70% of the brain is deprived of normal glucose uptake. There's huge biochemical changes in the brain immediately after a stroke. And it strikes me that my craving for Kit Kat was the expression of the fact that my biochemistry had gone completely haywire. And anyway, when I did come to in the hospital, the really lovely thing was I opened up the cupboard, the hospital little cupboard that they gave me, and the bottom shelf was completely full of Kit Kats, because everybody who'd come in had said, what does Michael want? And the children had said, well, he seems to like Kit Kat. They brought me Kit Kat. They'd also brought me Guinness, which was the other thing I liked. And so the hospital had come to the conclusion that I was possibly drinking too much. And one of the nurses poured all the Guinness in on St. Patrick's Day, which I thought was very mean, down on March the 17th, down the plug hole of the sink. And I complained to the doctor when he came round that my Guinness had gone down the sink. And he said, oh, don't worry, without blinking an eyelid, we'll put it on your prescription. And they wrote Guinness on the prescription. Now, every time the nurses opened up this little metal cabinet where my medicines were kept, facing them were 2 huge pints of Guinness, cans of Guinness, which made them blanch and made me laugh. And in the next bed there was a guy who was a professor of mathematics from Oxford University. Nobody is immune from strokes, it seems. And he managed to get on prescription a bottle of wine. So he had these little bottles of wine, which he was drinking with every meal, just about. And good for him, actually. Why not enjoy yourself while you're in the hospital? It can be, I think St. Patrick's Day is a great day for lots of different reasons. And there were lots of reasons to celebrate that day. So I definitely did drink Guinness. and I'm proud to say I still drink it. I'm not anti-alcohol or anti-anything, actually. I think as long as you're enjoying yourself, that's the main thing. You're not doing any harm to anybody, including yourself, and it's not out of control. That's good. So I'm not Michael McIntyre. I am Michael McIntyre. You can work that out. And I don't know any jokes. I do know some jokes, but I promised my kids that I wouldn't tell any because they're so awful. And so there are lots of strangenesses. And this thing about going to hospital got out of control because the hospital transferred me to, decided that I really didn't belong in the John Radcliffe. It transferred me to a stroke unit in Abingdon, a sweet little hospital. And I went very, very late one night when it was absolutely freezing cold. The beast from the east had just arrived. And we went in the ambulance. And when we got to Abingdon Hospital, my daughter got out of the ambulance, and the lady driving the ambulance said to the chap who was her co-driver, "Could you back this ambulance out for me?" And I said to her, "Why do you need somebody to help you back the ambulance? Don't you know how to do it?" She said, "Well, unfortunately, last time I backed an ambulance out of Abingdon Hospital, I took half this hospital with me when I backed it out, and I ripped the side of the ambulance off. I wasn't very popular, so I don't want to do that today." So she backed the ambulance. She got the guy to back the ambulance out, and then we dismounted and we got into the hospital. And I think that's when I came to, after the 6 weeks of no memory. I suddenly woke up and I was fully alert, and I'm reliably informed by some of the stroke specialists that some very strange things happen to your brain when you've had a stroke. Your brain gives up certain faculties that it has normally, and those are often taken up by other parts of your brain. Maybe the frontal brain, which makes decisions, becomes more powerful, and as a result of that, you can become very impulsive. And I definitely became very impulsive when I came to. I suddenly started behaving as if, I'd just come out of the stroke. And I found myself in this strange hospital with nobody I knew. And they wheeled me in, and they plonked me in a bed with rails up the side, almost like a little prison with little rails so I couldn't get out, or at least that was the theory. And I thought, right, what am I going to do? I'm leaving here. I'm leaving this hospital. I don't really want to be here. I used to be a student in Oxford, and I know it well, and I've had many, many good nights in Oxford. And I thought, hooray, I'm in Oxford, and I've got some money in my pocket. I'm going for a ride. And how am I going to get into Oxford? Well, my brain delivered me the answer. I'm not kidding. My brain told me the way I could get to Oxford was to get in the ambulance, because my sister-in-law, bless her heart, used to be an ambulance driver, and she once told me a long time ago, a fact that hadn't disappeared from my brain, that ambulance drivers didn't take the keys out of the ambulance because they got into such terrible trouble if they couldn't find the key and they were late to an emergency because they'd lost the key. So you used to leave the keys in the ambulance. So I thought, goody, I know that the ambulance will have a key in it. So I slid over the top of the railings like a snake. I had no idea that I couldn't walk because the left side of my body was completely paralysed. And so I couldn't walk, but I could slither. And I slithered like a good snake out of the ward, down the ward, out through the door, which very gratifyingly opened, and to the front door, which also opened with a swish. And I was just going out of the front door, where it was freezing actually, and on my belly, when one of the nurses heard the door open and came up and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just leaving the hospital." And they said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to find the ambulance I came in." And they said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to drive the ambulance into Oxford city centre to Carfax actually, and I don't think I'll have any trouble parking because nobody worries about ambulance parking. I can leave my ambulance where I want and I can go into a bar there. There's a rather good bar. Would you like to come with me? And the nurse said, no, you're not going anywhere. This is a disaster. You've got to get back into bed. He called a lot of other people and they hauled me, protesting loudly, back into bed. And they put on more railings, which I definitely couldn't climb over the top of. And that was the beginning of my relationship with the hospital, which didn't start on a very good foot. And when actually they released a report on me, when I left the hospital, they did a report. And the first thing they said is, this man is very impetuous. And he's got to be watched. So I didn't do myself any favours.
Michael, you've got 4 minutes.
4 minutes, yeah. And time to run a mile. And, it's also Roger Bannister, poor guy, he's not with us anymore. And where were we? Yeah, we were just Abingdon. Abingdon, bless their hearts, had a big problem. The problem is they woke up to the fact that I actually lived in Gloucestershire, and my rates were to Cotswold District Council, CDC. And so they kept on saying to my family, this man doesn't belong here. He shouldn't. He's in the wrong hospital, they kept on saying. They actually wrote me a letter saying, you've got to leave. And it was quite disconcerting, because when you've had a stroke and you're not feeling terribly well, it's not easy to get up and leave, as I discovered. And to go where exactly? That's not easy. And it became even more of a problem when the OT, the occupational therapist, said to me, I'd like to have a meeting with you. And I said, fine. She said, we'll go to the meeting room. She put me in my wheelchair and she wheeled me swiftly down the corridor to the meeting room, which had a glass panel. She looked through the glass panel. It was full of people having a meeting. She said, we can't go in there. It's full. I'm sorry. Would you mind going into another room? And I said, no. She said, can we go into this room? She opened a door, and it was the linen cupboard for the whole hospital. And we went into this linen room, which was full of sheets and pillowcases and everything clean. And she said, do you mind meeting here? And I said, no. And we had this meeting. She said, in all my 15 years as an OT, occupational therapist, I've never been to a house, she'd been to mine, such as yours, which is so ill-equipped to receive somebody having a stroke. She said, you can't go home anymore. You're homeless, effectively, and I'm afraid you'll have to sell your house, and you'll never drive again, and you've got to come to terms with all this. So that was the end of the meeting. We then came out of the linen room, me as white as a sheet, I think, and she feeling happy because she'd divulged all this important information to me. And I decided then that I was going to take not a jot or tittle of notice of what she'd said to me. And I wasn't going either. And so I didn't leave Abingdon for a few weeks after that. But fortunately, my gorgeous daughters, I've got 3 of them, actually found me a hospital. And the hospital they found me was, how much longer have I got? 1 minute. It was a Steiner hospital run on Rudolf Steiner principles. You know, there are schools, Steiner schools, which quite a lot of people know about. And the idea is that the spirit is everything, and it needs engaging. And the spirit in the Steiner hospital is engaged through painting, music. I mean, having somebody come and sit on your bed and ask you what songs you like. And we use Spotify to find the songs that I like, and we would sing them together on a guitar. She on a guitar and me with a rattle. And I really enjoyed that. It was great. We got it off my chest. And it somehow cheers you up. And if you're cheered up, you get better, because being cheerful is the most important thing, I realised. I realised some other things as well when I was in the Steiner Hospital. I was so supported by friends and family that I've come to the conclusion there's nothing more important than friends and family in the world, and that I'm going to live my life for my friends and family. And sorry if I feel a bit emotional. It's just last week my dear mother died. Unfortunately, I didn't see her before I came out of hospital, and she was an extraordinary lady who lived for everybody, and I think is a great example. She was Greek, and so I'm very proud to say I now think Epicurus, the Epicureans, who said, eat, drink and be merry, for tomorrow we die, had the right idea. You know, they say that, I'm finishing now, they say that life is a sexually transmitted condition with an invariably fatal outcome. I think we all need to take that point on board, that actually we're all going to die, and we ought to practice dying every day. And I think my stroke has been a stroke of great fortune, because it's caused me to reassess my life, to realise how lucky I am to have good friends and to have a wonderful family, and to celebrate those things in the way that one should, which is enjoy them and enjoy everything about life, and be cheerful and not worry, because, you know, this world of ours is very worrying when you look out there. I mean, there's Brexit, for God's sake.
On that note, thank you very much. Apparently Tom Petty's coming on. But I just thank you so much, Michael. That was, yes, if that's all right. Does anyone have any questions for Michael? Thank you, yes.
Everybody. Hello.
Sorry, it was just a quick question actually.
What's
about
your name?
Leo.
Hello, Leo.
Herbal medicine, because that's your specialism.
It is, yeah, it's my thing.
Just a very practical question as to whether one can have too much of a given herbal medicine, because often it's just anecdotal that one starts on something. And I use the example of actually when I was drinking a lot of sage tea, because it came from the garden, and I thought, this is just great, and I like it, and I started getting ocular migraines as a result of it. And it got me really thinking about the boundaries of how far we should self-medicate with natural things like that.
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up. Nothing, natural can kill you, just like anything else. There are lots of poisons in your garden if you eat the wrong things, and herbal medicines can cause a lot of trouble. The famous example now is the one that everybody uses, is St. John's wort. St. John's wort works on the liver. It works on one of the enzyme systems of the liver called the cytochrome P450 system, which is a ladder down which various materials are metabolized in the body so they can be excreted. And if you interfere with that, you interfere with your body's ability to be able to get rid of these chemicals. So there are quite a few women actually who claim that St. John is now the father of their child, or inadvertently, because in taking St. John's wort, it actually pushed out of their body the contraceptive pill on which they rely for not getting pregnant, and therefore they got pregnant as a result. So you've got to be careful what you have. Grapefruit can cause a problem, because grapefruit slows down your liver's metabolism by a factor of 2, and some people have got very sick indeed by eating concentrated grapefruit juice, or drinking it rather, or eating grapefruit and having some conventional medicines. it interferes with quite a lot of medicines. So I don't recommend grapefruit. There's nothing wrong with grapefruit. It's not poisonous or anything. It's just, it has this effect on the liver, which people don't know about. I had a very funny thing happen. I have spent the last 20 years campaigning to get herbal medicine properly recognised and regulated. And as part of that, I was asked when the government decided what it was going to do about St John's wort, to come to a public, to a big press release from the government. And actually it was run by Tony Blair's office in typical Tony Blair style, with a lot of people who were going to tell the press exactly what they should say. So we were asked to turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning at the Department of Health in Whitehall, where we were all schooled and put through our paces. And when I was asked what I was going to say, I said to the Chief Medical Officer of Health, who asked me, I'm going to say that St John's wort is rather like grapefruit. And she said, excuse me, Mr. McIntyre, if you say you're going to say anything about grapefruit, we're not going to let you into this press conference. You can't go in. Are you going to say anything about grapefruit or not? And I said, I won't. And she said, in that case, you go to the press conference. So I went in, and the head of the Committee of Safety of Medicines was giving the first talk. He was a very eminent doctor. And when he finished, this lady put up her hand and she said, Susie somebody from the Daily Mail. And he said, yes, what's your question? She said, Professor Breckenbridge, that was his name, is this not just like grapefruit juice? And I saw the woman from the 10 Downing Street press office at the back of the hall give me a glare as to say, if you so much as smirk or laugh, you're dead. But it was a very funny moment. Yes, herbs can cause a lot of trouble, and they can interact with drugs, and you should know what you're doing. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. On the other hand, they are amazingly cheap to produce, and they are efficacious, and there's a lot of biochemistry to back this up. And doctors ought to be using them. We've got antimicrobial resistance, that's another nightmare.
Do you mind if I stop you there, Michael?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And herbs can sort that out.
ChippyWellFest, we'll have to give Michael the whole
sorry,
morning.
I've got time's up.
Thank you so much, that was really...
Yeah, thank you. Get me out.
So we're going to...